Hello, I'm Clark Crawford, and welcome to Clark Crawford Sports. Today, I'm going to be giving you a brief recap of the divisional round weekend games, along with the preview of the AFC and NFC title games, which will include my picks for the week. Before I get into my preview and my game picks, make sure you hit the subscribe button, which is on the bottom right corner where my logo is of the screen, and shows support to my channel. Thanks for everyone who's subscribed so far. Now, to get into the divisional round results, the divisional round ended with the Ravens beating the Texans 34-10. The Niners beat the Packers 24-21. Lions won against Tampa Bay 31-23. And to wrap up the weekend, the Sunday night game, we had Kansas City going to Buffalo and win on the road 27-24. Also, another thing to note, in the past week, several NFL coaches have been hired. So let's quickly review who's going where. So first up, we have Brian Callahan, former Bengals offense coordinator. He's now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Jim Harbaugh is moving from the University of Michigan, where he just won the national title, to take the Chargers job, former head coach of the 49ers. Dave Canales is leaving Tampa Bay as their offensive coordinator and he was just named the Panthers head coach yesterday as I'm recording this video on Friday. And lastly, Raheem Morris, former Rams defensive coordinator, took the job to become the Atlanta Falcons head coach. Now that we have the important news of the week out of the way, it's time to get into the preview of the title games for each conference. There are 4 teams remaining in the playoffs who have their Super Bowl hopes alive. So for the first of 2 games, if you don't already know, of the weekend, is between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. These 2 teams did not square off this season, so it's the first time we'll be getting this matchup in the 2023 season and obviously the 2024 Super Bowl to come. Now, the first thing I want to note about this matchup is it's a battle between Patrick Mahomes, last season's MVP, and Lamar Jackson, the odds-on favorite to win this year's award. Now, Kansas City's offense has been less than stellar for most of the season, though they seem to have found their stride against Buffalo this past weekend for the most part. Specifically, Kansas City's passing attack has been inconsistent for most of the year, with having by far the most drops from their wide receiver, tight end, and running back core, as passing them the ball has been a problem. Now, the Kansas City's passing attack has been inconsistent for most of the year, but did Mahomes figure something out in the Buffalo game, as he connected with Travis Kelce for 2 scores, along with Rashee Rice having 4 catches and Marquez Valdes-Scantling having 2 catches for 62 yards. Now, all those don't sound like a whole lot because Mahomes only threw for less than 250 yards, but Mahomes was consistent and Kansas City's offense for most of the game was clicking. So, as I mentioned, Rashee Rice, he's continues to make valuable strides as Kansas City's number 1 wide receiver. And another thing to keep in mind for Kansas City's side of things, Patrick Mahomes is a 13-3 career playoff record, so that plays a major factor in potentially you or myself or whoever deciding this game, because all Patrick Mahomes does so far in his postseason career is win. Now, for the Ravens side of things, coming into this game, they have the best record in the league, and that comes with having home field advantage in this game. This Baltimore team is led by a top 5 offense and top 5 defense, which is why Lamar Jackson is the odds-on favorite to win MVP. He's been phenomenal throughout most of the season. Now, coming into this game, Baltimore's defense has the most forced turnovers and sacks on the season out of their defense. So Baltimore's defense is tops in the league. So how is Patrick Mahomes going to fare facing his toughest test of this postseason? Another boost for Baltimore's defense is All-Pro tight end Mark Andrews has been activated off IR, and he will play this weekend. Along with that, they also could be getting back former All-Pro cornerback Marlon Humphrey. So that could play a huge key into this game. Now, with all of that being said, considering all of the factors in this game, Mahomes' playoff record, Lamar Jackson playing phenomenal throughout the year, Baltimore's great defense, I've considered all the factors, and here comes my pick. I'm taking Baltimore in this game because I made the mistake last week to pick the Texans to upset Baltimore last week, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Baltimore will be advancing to play in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, as they will beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, for the final matchup of the weekend, it features the Detroit Lions traveling to California to face the San Francisco 49ers. The Lions are seeking their first ever Super Bowl appearance, while the 49ers have played in 7 Super Bowls and they support a 5-2 record in those games. On paper, this is a true David and Goliath matchup, but on the field, these two teams are much closer to being evenly matched than it would show on paper. The 49ers having 7 Super Bowl appearances to none for the Lions, that seems like it would, be a heavy favorite, but these two teams are a lot more evenly matched. Like the first matchup, Detroit and San Francisco also did not play each other earlier in the season, so we get a fresh matchup and not sometimes in the playoffs when you get 2 division foes playing each other, you get a third matchup of the season. And I'm not saying that can become boring, but some people don't want to watch teams face off 3 times in one season. But this game is the first between these two this season, so we get a fresh matchup. With that being said, let's start with the Lions. They come into this game as 7.5 point underdogs, and the Lions have been put to the test this postseason already against the Los Angeles Rams and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as they came away with narrow victories getting them to this point. Lions, some people believed, were underdogs against the Rams and Buccaneers because, well, the Lions are not used to being to this point, and a lot of people thought the Lions might choke in the playoffs, but they did not. I believe that Detroit's best chance to win this game is getting into a shootout with the San Francisco 49ers. The Lions' offense has put up more than 30 points 10 times this season. The only problem for the Lions is if you get into a shootout, the 49ers also support a top 10 offense. So it's one of those things, and, well, both teams have a top 10 offense, so can you truly outscore your opponents? I believe the Lions can. Now, will they win this game? I'll tell you later on after I give you the rest of my preview. Now, the 49ers have a good defense this year, but it's not as great as it was last season or the previous few seasons because they lost their defensive coordinator, DeMeco Ryans, who is now the Texans head coach. Their defense this year is much more vulnerable and prone to giving up big plays. The 49ers had a top 5 defense last year, and they're more of a fringe top 10 team this year. That's just the facts. Their defense is, like I said, a lot more vulnerable, and I think Detroit's best chance is getting into a shootout, like I said. Now, Detroit, in my opinion, should try to push the tempo early, attempting to force San Francisco to play from behind. The Packers got off and led that game for much of the game last week, and the 49ers had to make a late comeback to win the game where Brock Purdy and the offense were much out of sync for most of the game, but they managed to put together a drive in the final minutes, winning the game because Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the NFL. They leaned on him, he scored the game-winning touchdown, and the rest is history. Now, the 49ers still have plenty of firepower on both sides of the ball, though Deebo Samuel, one of their star receivers, is questionable to play after leaving last week's game with the shoulder injury. Even if Deebo is unable to play, the good news for the 49ers, as I just mentioned him, is you still have Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the NFL, who's their most important player. I expect Brock Purdy to have a better game than he did last week, where he nearly threw multiple interceptions, and let's be real, the Packers should have won that game. Now, my pick for this week's game is I have the 49ers winning this game to set up a rematch of Super Bowl 47, where the 49ers and the Ravens squared off, and the Ravens won 34-31. That will wrap up my AFC and NFC title game preview and picks for the game. Thank you all for watching, and if you aren't already, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see all of you in my next video.